Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasakine Nirvishishta Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadhar Sivasadi Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So today we'll discuss based on the Bhagavad Gita. This is coming. Can you come in this side? So we'll explain the meaning of the words and then we'll recite it. So, Krishna. So I'll explain the meaning of each line and then we'll recite the line. So, Asau Maya Hataha Shatru. This particular enemy I have killed. This is Bhavita 16th chapter, 14th verse. So Krishna is describing the mentality of demoniac people, those who are villainous. Asau Maya Hataha Shatru. Are all of you listening? So, Hanishye is future tense. I will kill. Hanishye Chaparanapi. Others also I will kill them. Other enemies also I will kill. Hanishye Chaparanapi. Ishwaroham. I am the controller. Aham Bhogi. I am the enjoyer. Ishwaro aham bhogi. Siddhoham. Siddho is I am perfect. Balavan, I am powerful. And Sukhi, I am happy. So this is the demoniac mentality that Krishna is describing. Siddhoham Balavan Sukhi. Asau Maya Hatah Shatru. Hanishye Chaparanapi. Ishwaro aham bhogi. Siddhoham balvan sukhi. Asau maya hatah shatru. Hanishye chaparanapi. Ishwaro aham bhogi. Siddho aham balvan sukhi. So let's recite this all together last time. Together. Asamaya Shatru Hanishye Chaparanapi. Ishwaro bhogi. Siddho. So today we're going to discuss the topic of how when a person does something wrong, when do bad actions indicate that the person is bad? We all make mistakes. We all do some wrong things. This is a continuation of yesterday's talk, but also a separate standalone talk. Yesterday I spoke upon how all wrong actions are not equal. Some wrong actions are done out of good intention, but they have a bad result. Some wrong actions are done out of bad intention. Now the problem is we can't really look at people's intentions. We can only see their actions. So how do we know whether if a person has made a mistake? That indicates that okay, it's just a circumstantial thing, it's one-off thing, and we should forgive and forget and move on. Or if they made a mistake, it indicates something seriously wrong inside them. And then we have to take it, maybe disciplinary action, seek justice, or whatever. So this verse is indicative of a mentality of a perverted person, a wicked person, a demoniac person. So this person, it's one thing, generally we humans are made in such a way that whenever we do something bad, especially if we hurt someone, we feel bad about it. If I'm walking along, I use crutches for walking, and I try to be careful when I'm in crowds, because what happens is the crutches, the part of the crutches on which my weight goes, that might accidentally go on someone's foot. And then normally if our shoes go, the shoes are pointed, but these crutches are even more focused, so the whole weight comes in. So I try to be very careful. Accidentally, I feel the level is, the ground is too soft. And I lift the crutch. What's happening? This put on somebody's foot or something like that. So normally, if we do something that hurts someone, as soon as we become aware of it, we try to stop it. And then we apologize, we try to correct ourselves. So that is a normal human behavior. But these are people who they actually get a sense of joy. So they're scheming and dreaming. I eliminated this person, not just hurt this person, I destroyed this person, kill this person. Asav Maya Hatha Shatru, and then Hanishe Chaparam. That I have killed that person. Or I will kill those people. And after doing that, they think, oh, just see how powerful I am. Just see how much of a good planner I am, good executor I am. And they think this is a sign of their cleverness, their power, their success. Such is a deadly mentality. Sometimes terrorists do it, they kill people and they make photos of themselves killing people, defenseless people, and celebrate that. That kind of thing is horrendous. It could be sometimes psychopaths do that, sometimes brutal people do that. So this is, Krishna is giving us a vivid picture of a person who has an outright evil mentality. So broadly speaking, we will talk about 3 kinds of people and 2 kinds of indicators to understand where a person is. So the 3 kinds of people are people with goodness, people with weakness, and does anyone remember? Wickedness, yes. People with wickedness. These are 3 kinds of people. And then I'll talk about 2 kinds of actions. There is, whenever something, so we are evaluating wrongdoing over here. There is remorse. Remorse means we internally feel bad. I did something wrong. I should not have done it. And then this is, remorse is more internal. And then there is reform. Reform is external, where the behavior changes. So now, it's not that just because people are good, that means they have goodness, that means they will never commit mistakes. Even good people will commit mistakes. Everybody is flawed in this. But the characteristic of a good person is, when they mistake, there is remorse internally, and then there is reform externally. They feel bad about it internally, and then they change themselves. I will not do this. People who have weakness, they feel bad when they do something bad. But somehow they keep doing the same thing. The reform is not. And people who have wickedness, with them, there is neither reform nor remorse. They do it and they continue doing it. If at all they stop, it's only because they feel that, and I will not be able to get away with it. So the words that we discussed just now, I've killed this person, I've killed that other person. That falls in which, that mentality falls in which of these three categories? Wickedness. Yeah. So the Gita talks broadly about two kinds of people. Does anyone know which are those two kinds of people? There are people who are wise, and there are people who are otherwise. So Krishna doesn't use these words. Krishna uses divine and demonic, Daivi and Asuri Pravritti. So this is chapter 16. Krishna talks about these. Now, while he talks about these two distinct categories, in real life, it is not. After Krishna talks about these two categories, he actually describes these two natures of people in terms of qualities. So rather than thinking that this person is divine and this person is demoniac, rather how Krishna says this, these are the qualities that comprise the divine nature. And these are the qualities that comprise the demoniac nature. So for example, say here, he talks about in divine nature, Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhi, Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti, he gives a list of qualities over. And the demoniac nature, he gives certain qualities. Dambho, Darpo, Abhimanascha, Krodha, Paryamivaya. Arrogance, harshness, violence, ignorance, all these are characteristics of the demoniac nature. Kindness, gentleness, forgiveness, humility. These are characteristics of the divine nature. So he gives these qualities. And in real life, when we want to understand people, then it's not that we can readily put people. Okay, this person is demoniac, this person is divine. Not necessarily like that. In real life, we see that people have a constellation of qualities. They have many different qualities. And some qualities in people may be divine, some qualities may be demonic. Generally, it is extremely polite to tell someone you are a demon. So, not only is it not polite, it's also unlikely to be true. Yes, there are people who are demoniac, but they are relatively rare. Those who do wrong and delight in doing wrong. They celebrate doing wrong. Sometimes you might say in Hindi movies, you might see some big dons or gundas. They kill someone in public and they say that. Just see now, is there anyone who will come and witness? No one. This is my power. So such people are there, but they are relatively few. Most of the times in our daily interactions, we are unlikely to encounter people. So the word encounter in India and the West has different meanings. You know the meaning in India? Encounter. Here we encounter people. In India, people do encounter of people. Okay. So those of you who don't know that meaning of encounter, you are fortunate. Anyway, so here, when somebody does some wrong action, so if somebody is short-tempered, and in their short-tempered, they yell and scream, and then they become aggressive. And then after that, they are very repentant. Oh, I'm sorry, I won't do like this. Somebody has some unhealthy habit. Maybe we have a friend, a relative, or somebody who is maybe taking alcohol or getting into drugs or something like that. And they say, I will never do this again. Now, how much can we take them at their word? Or if they keep doing it again, and one thing we say, they keep doing it again and again and again, it indicates that they are not a good person. But not necessary. Repetition is one indication, but it's not the sole indication. I'll explain why. But broadly, the question here is that how do we know whether somebody is a good person or a bad person? So what I'll do is, we have limited time, so I'll take only two character examples of one who is a person in goodness when they commit a mistake, and a person with wickedness when they commit a mistake. And then we'll look at the third example without going to scriptural stories. But I'll look at these two stories from the Mahabharata. So, with respect to goodness and wickedness. So, the example I take is of Yudhishthira. And here, yes, who? Duryodhana. Perfect. So, now let's start with a negative example and then we'll move toward the positive. Now, when Duryodhana was born, at that time, the way things were was that Duryodhana was born in the kingdom. Which was the kingdom? Hastinapur. And at that time, Pandu had renounced the world. And Pandavas were born far away in the Himalayas. So there was no indication whether Pandu would even have children, whether those children would ever come back to the kingdom. So Duryodhana grew up with the expectation that I will become the next king. It was not just an expectation, it was almost a sense of entitlement. When some king has children, generally, what is the word used for a king's child? Prince. Now, it's not that all the children are princes or prince or princess. So there is the heir. Heir is the person who is going to become the next king. And normally when kings have children, they have an heir and they have a spare. Spare means that if something happens to the heir, then we should have somebody to succeed. So now, the spare's life is often quite uncertain. It's unlikely you're going to become the king, but if your brother dies, then you will become the king. Or do you wish your brother should die? It's not a very pleasant situation to be. So when Duryodhana was living in the kingdom, he thought that I am the heir. And because of that, he blew a lot of air. That means he became very proud, very arrogant, very disrespectful to people. And then Pandu passed away, unfortunately, in the forest. And then the Pandavas came back. When they came back, Yudhishthira was new. Normally, if in a family a new child comes, everybody pays attention to the new child. And if in a community, a new closely tightly knit community, if a new child comes, it's curiosity, who is the new child? And if that new child is also well behaved, then people just fall in love with the child. So that's what happened to Duryodhana. One day he was the heir and he was the center of attention for everyone. And next day when the Pandavas came back, everybody was paying attention to this new guy, Yudhishthira. And on top of that, Yudhishthira was also slightly older than Duryodhana. And that's why what happened, Duryodhana felt that suddenly from the heir, he has become the spare. And he started feeling very insecure. Now, this insecurity is entirely understood. It's a natural human emotion. But we all have emotions. And then there are actions. And then we can look at situations. Situations could be our present situations, our past situations. So our situations can explain our emotions. That is true. But our situations cannot excuse our actions. The two are different things. I felt angry because of this. Okay, I can understand that you feel angry. But that doesn't mean that, say, in the middle of a public gathering, we yell and scream at someone and create a big scene. No, that is not exclusive. So Duryodhana's emotion of feeling insecure is understandable. But what he did thereafter was reprehensible. What did he do? First, he tried to poison him. And this is a deadly thing to do. See, taking food is among the most relaxing activities that we do. Feel comfortable, you feel relaxed, and nourishes. And if you're taking food at home, who thinks at home they might be poisoned by something? So and he was just Bhima was a teenager, Duryodhana was a teenager, and at that time Duryodhana organized the whole scheme. He said, let's organize a picnic. And that picnic, he said, Bhima, you like to eat? I made a special feast for you, and I will feed you personally. And he had slow acting poison. So the poison wouldn't lead to a dramatic blood vomiting and he's trembling or something like that. The poison would just put him to sleep, and while he was asleep, and gradually he could be killed. So Bhima fell asleep and then he tied him up and threw him into the water, or so that he would drown. So this is a devilish thing to do. And then when this didn't work out, then there was no thinking that, oh, I should not be doing such a thing. He thought, let's make a bigger plan. Instead of just removing Bhima, he decided, let's remove all of them. And that's why he had them all sent to Varnavas, and he tried to have all of them burned alive. So here we can see that there is a difference between anger, or I'll ask you, is there a difference between anger and hate? Okay. What is the difference? What do you think is the difference between anger and hate?
Anger is personal, but hate is aimed at a person. Like you're aiming at another person, you dislike that person. Anger is something internal, belongs to you. You feel angry with a situation or a person, but hate is directed to another person. That's right.
Yeah, it's a good point. Anger can be towards the situation, but hate is too strong an emotion to get the situation.
Yeah.
That's me towards some entity. I would say I hate this person. Sometimes also I hate this country. You might say that. It's some entity. So it's more specific, you can say. Anger can be more generic. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Anger is a worse situation. Sorry, the hate is worse than anger.
Hate is worse than anger. Yes. If this difference somebody had not spoken, I don't know whether I would have anger for you or hate for you. No, neither. But yeah, I agree. Yes.
Yes. So it's to see day or time, but hate can be period.
Yes. Hate can be long lasting. Are you speaking from personal experience? Yes. Yes, please. Yeah.
You guys still spontaneous. And
anger is
internal, long term.
Yes. So temporary and spontaneous. Generally, I prefer. In Bhakti, we use the word spontaneous a little more positively. Spontaneous devotion, we say. So let's use the word. It's impulsive. Suddenly a rush of blood comes up and we get angry and we yell at people. But hate is not impulsive. Hate is, yes, it's cultivated over a long time. It's almost like you can say it's contemplated, it's cultivated, it's almost regurgitated inside us repeatedly. Yes, you want to tell me?
I will just give an example. Like you can be angry at your child or your husband. You can't hate them, so that can be a differentiation.
Yes, we should hope so. Yeah. So you can say anger can be within affection.
Yeah.
When we have affection for someone, still we can be angry. In fact, sometimes because we have affection, that's why we are angry. Isn't it? If some stranger misbehaves, we don't really care about it. But if we love and trust and we care, they misbehave, then we get angry. So anger can be within affection, but hate it destroys all affection. It's completely, you can say, outside affection. So what that means is that there is a significant difference between them. So what was the, thank you for all these answers. The one way I like to put this is that it's something similar. Anger is hot-headed. Hate is cold-blooded. So now Duryodhan's emotion towards the Pandavas, was it anger or was it hate? Hate. You have to make a whole plan to burn someone. You know, that's not just anger, that is not momentary. So now after that, when even that didn't work out, he thought it worked out, but the Pandavas survived. Then when they came back and then they tried to have the gambling match in which they humiliated the Pandavas, defrauded them of all their wealth, and then they tried to humiliate the Draupadi. And this was the time when whatever mask they were putting on, yes, the mask fell apart. They threw the mask up. Sometimes some people do something wrong, but then afterward they try to act like a good person. So if you see the previous two wrong actions, they were done to some extent secretly. Nobody knew. They went for a picnic and Duryodhana and Bhima were alone together, and that's why it put fed poison. And here it was in another part of the kingdom, which is a very remote part of the kingdom. And there Duryodhana had one of his agents set the fire over there. But here Duryodhana was doing it in public. But this is the nature of wicked people, that the more wrong they do, the more they feel driven to do greater and greater wrongs. So Duryodhana, while the Pandavas were being humiliated, while they were in a very evil way planning the dishonoring of Draupadi, they were all laughing and sneering at the Pandavas. So this was clearly wickedness. And there is no place anywhere where Duryodhana expresses any remorse. If at all there was any regret, the regret was not that he did something wrong. The regret was only that what he didn't do the wrong well enough for him to succeed. So the idea is that once a cop pulled over a person who was driving very fast. And the cop said, "You're driving very fast." He says, "Not really." "What do you mean?" "See, if I had driving very fast, you would not have been able to catch me." So some people think that the only regret they have is that they didn't do the wrong as well as they could have, so that it would have succeeded. That is terrible. So here what we see with respect to Duryodhana is that there was zero remorse, absolutely no remorse. And not only there's no remorse, there's also reform. Again, no reform. Instead, there was, you could say, deform. He became worse and worse. So such a mentality where a person does not even, leave alone apologizing, that person doesn't even acknowledge that I did something wrong. There is no sign that person even feels bad. And the person not only continues doing bad, but does worse. Then that is a wickedness. And such wickedness, when there is wickedness, and if for wickedness there is forgiveness, what will happen is that is simply foolishness. If a wicked person, we keep forgiving them. Oh, you did something bad, that's okay. No, that doesn't work. A criminal is just forgiven. They will keep doing worse things. And that is why eventually the Pandavas had to fight over. They tried their very best. Even after everything that happened, they said that let's try to settle peacefully. Krishna himself came as a peace messenger. But Duryodhana was not at all ready to listen. So that is an indication of a wicked person. So what did Duryodhana do in fact? He not only did not listen to the peace proposal, but he said, what did he say? That I will not give enough land to even put the tip of a needle through. If that had been the age of social media, this would have been a viral YouTube short or Insta reel. Kya dialogue hai? But in terms of context, what does it mean? Suppose say we invite somebody for some ceremony at our home, some program, some event. and now they don't want to come, so they make an excuse. They are making an excuse. We know that they are making an excuse, and they know that we know that they are making an excuse. But at least out of courtesy, they're trying to make an excuse. But if they say, even if I die, my dead body will never come to your program. That's good timing. Now, if somebody says that, then probably we will want to say, I don't want even your living body to come to my program. So that the response is not just a refusal to the invitation, it is a kick in the face of the inviter. So Duryodhana was like this. And that's why he could not be forgiven. He would have kept doing worse and worse things. So in general, if there is no remorse, now how do we know remorse is there? It's difficult to know, but generally we can, reform is something we can see. So reform, in one sense, is visible over time. Is this person changing? But remorse, there are at least some things over there. At least a person has to acknowledge, I did something wrong. Then there has to be, they need to apologize. Sometimes there is something called apology, non-apology. What that means is, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. That doesn't mean I'm sorry that what I did, but you are such a snowflake that you get hurt over small things. I'm sorry that I hurt you. So it's some kind of apology, but it's like a apology combined with a criticism. You are super sensitive. You're hypersensitive. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. So at least they say, I didn't know that these words would hurt you. I'm sorry, I won't use such words in the future. That's a little more authentic. But if a person, there's not even an acknowledgement like that. There's not even acknowledgement, there's not even an apology. And then while we can't see into people's hearts, but generally it is very difficult for most people to lie just openly and brazenly unless they are very big. So we can also look at their actions, especially in terms of their gestures, expressions, eye contacts, get a little bit of a picture of their mind also. Some people can lie. Some people can lie, and nowadays there is polygraph or lie detector tests, which the police use. They are not very reliable, but sometimes those are used. But the point is, remorse can be understood to some extent. When somebody says, I'm sorry. And they're saying, I am sorry in such a way that they feel sorry, not that the impression that we get is, not they are sorry for what they did. They're sorry because they have to say sorry. There is no remorse over it. That basically remorse and reform, these two things we can see. So that's clearly a wicked person. On the other hand, if we move towards the other side, like goodness, the nature of the world is that even good people will sometimes commit mistakes. Yudhishthira is known as Dharmaraj. And I was giving a talk on the Mahabharata. It seems that there's a department of, can you hear me? Yeah. So there was a department of Hindu studies in Harvard. So they had invited me to speak on the Mahabharata. I was speaking primarily about Karna, but in the issue of Yudhishthira came. So I was saying, how can you people consider Yudhishthira as the king of virtue? Dharmaraj, when he gambled his wife. Even an ordinary decent person won't do like that. How can a virtuous person do like that? And how can a person who does like that, how can you consider that person virtuous? And it's a valid question. But generally, whenever we want to look at an action, we have to look at the context of the action. When somebody does something, often what we see is just an action. but the action has some past to it, and the action has a future to it. So generally, many times people may quote us out of context. How do you make a statement like this? That was not my point. Look at what I said before, look at what I said before, after. So if you look at the broader context of what Yudhishthir did, so Yudhishthir performed the Rajasuya Yajna and it was spectacularly successful. His purpose was to ensure that Krishna would be glorified as the greatest person. So it's like, suppose there is some devotee enters in a political elections and say a devotee becomes the chief minister of a state in Maharashtra or becomes a chief minister of becomes a big head of state or a big official position they get. And then there is the inauguration ceremony. And at that time, maybe a guest of honor is invited to give a speech. And at that time, the devotee invites their guru. Now it is a devotee who has become a very powerful, successful person. But the devotee is using their success to glorify their guru. That guru gets a position like that to speak to the entire state or the entire country. So for Yudhishthir also, it was like that. Now, today, we know that Krishna is God. But at that time, most people didn't really know. Krishna was born in apparently he was born in a village or he was born in jail and then he went to a village. And he came back, he killed Kamsa. But they understood he was a powerful person. But how powerful was he? At that time, not everybody understood that. So Yudhishthir performed the Rajasuya Yajna so that at that time, the Agra Puja, the greatest person in this assembly, when all the greatest people, not only from the earth but from the universe, would be there, he's declared Krishna to be that person. So that would be a glorification of Krishna. So that's why he performed that ceremony. And then, when the ceremony concluded, Vyasadeva had been heading the ceremony. So he sought Vyasadeva's blessings. O sage, thank you for organizing this ceremony. Please bless me so that I can rule over a peaceful and a prosperous kingdom. Vyasadeva became grave. And he said, O king, I see great darkness and upheaval in the future. There will be a huge war. And after that war, which will establish you as the king, then there will be peace and prosperity. On hearing Vyasadev's words, Yudhishthir became pensive. He started thinking, what could be the cause of war? I don't want a war. So he did his own reason. He said, if we consider war, what is the cause of war? Generally, the war is caused by unresolved conflicts. Now, when conflicts remain unresolved for a long time, and finally people explode and they fight, then what causes conflicts to remain unresolved? That is generally disregard of authority. So if two people have a difference of opinion and then they go to an authority, and if both people are ready to accept the authority, then the issue is solved. So for example, if there is a elder in the family, say two siblings are fighting, then they go to the parent and the parent resolves the issue. So that's an authority. Nowadays we have justice system which is much more sophisticated. So two people have a conflict and they go to court, and the court makes a decision. So but if people think the court is unfair, they disregard the authority, then what will happen? Then people will take arms themselves. Vigilante justice. Vigilante justice is where some person becomes a self-appointed killer or destroyer of all the corrupt elements. In movies that can look nice, but in real life it is dangerous. If everybody takes the law and starts taking the law in their own hands, then we will neither have hands nor law. Because it will become jungle. So he says, so when is there disregard of authority? When there is disobedience. So so he said at that time Yudhishthira took a vow that I will always obey my elders. In this way, I will try to avoid war. But little did he know what this vow would compel him to do. Because normally when you say obey your elders, unfortunately Yudhishthir had a very biased elder. Who was that? Dhritarashtra. So then Duryodhan pressured and persuaded Dhritarashtra to call the Pandavas for a gaming match. And not only that, Dhritarashtra had Vidura go on his behalf. So for Yudhishthir, it became a instruction coming from one elder through another elder. And both of them he respected. So he didn't want to give way, but he felt compelled. He felt constrained. And the first thing when Vidura came with this information, first thing that Yudhishthir said was, if we gamble, we will fight. We should best not gamble. Yes, I agree with you, but I have tried to make Dhritarashtra see sense, but he's just not ready to listen. Reluctantly, Yudhishthir came there to the Pandavas' kingdom of Hastinapur from Indraprastha. And Duryodhan welcomed him with a mocking smile. He said, so are you ready for the gambling match? Yudhishthir said, why do you want to steal from me the wealth that I plan to use for dharma, for establishing order and virtue in societies? I don't want to steal anything. It's just a game. Now, just a game is the phrase used by people who are often either fools or want to make others fools. It's now one of my in America there is one city which is called Sin City. You know which was it is? Las Vegas. How do you know? You should be asking, how do I know? Actually, we have devotees there, so I visited there also. So it's interesting. This it's interesting what they say that when you gamble, what is the worst thing that can happen to you if you gamble? Normally, you think you lose everything. But the worst thing that can happen to a person who gambles is that they win. Because if you lose, you learn the lesson never again. But if you win, then the mind gets intoxicated. Yeah, it's quick money. And then keep playing more and more and more. So now, it's not that Yudhishthir had any uncontrolled senses or he had some greed for wealth. It is not that he went there because he wanted to get some money, quick money. No. But he felt constrained because his elders felt it. That's what they asked him to do. And then once the gambling started, Yudhishthira said, okay, Duryodhan, so if that's what you want, let us gamble. He says, yeah, Shakuni will be throwing the dice on my behalf. So that's like the two kids have some quarrel and they decide, okay, let's wrestle. Let's have a boxing match. And the two kids come to the neighborhood. And when one kid comes on the second kid, okay, actually, I have got Mike Tyson on my behalf. It's completely unfair. Shakuni, Yudhishthir was a king. And a king means we might think of kings only as enjoying in royal opulence. But actually, it's a lot of responsibility. Yudhishthir had a huge amount of responsibility as a king. Whereas Shakuni, although he was supposed to be a king of Kandahar, he hardly spent any time in Kandahar. He was mostly in the Pandavas' kingdom, in the Kauravas' kingdom. And he had practiced gambling till the point he had become like a gamester, a professional gambler. So he said, this is not right. And again, Duryodhana said, okay, if you are afraid, you didn't fight. You didn't play. So Yudhishthira turned towards Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra remained silent. Throughout this whole incident, Dhritarashtra remained silent again and again and again. And as the gambling match went worse and worse and worse, now Yudhishthira was hoping that just he he felt that it is my duty to protect my citizens, duty to take care of the Brahmins, it is my duty to take care of my family. And he was thinking, I have come here with good intentions. So at least one dice will go right. And if one dice goes right, I'll get some wealth at least. Then we can call it a lose. But it just went on and on and on until he gambled everything he used. And finally, the Pandavas had to go to the forest. And when they went to the forest, at that time, Draupadi lashed out at Yudhishthira. He says, how could you gamble like this? She said that I was constrained by the vow that I had taken. Yudhishthira said, but he said, at that time, I got carried away. So he acknowledged his mistake. But now the key point over here is, sometimes we think my intentions are good. What is good enough? Well, yeah, good. We should have good intentions, but the world is a cruel place. Sometimes even good intentions can be exploited. So now, this was a terrible mistake from his side. But now Yudhishthira, he learned from his mistake. So what happened was, while he was in the forest, one time, I think it was Narad Muni or some Narad Muni came to meet him. And he was surprised to see that Yudhishthira was gambling. Yudhishthira, what are you doing? He said, did you lose enough by gambling? He said, I know. He said that I suspect that at the end of this exile, Duryodhan will find some excuse and will try to get me to gamble again. If that happens, I want to be ready. So he says, there was a sage in the forest, Vishapaya. Apparently, sages knew all kinds of things. So this sage was expert at gambling. He wouldn't gamble. He wouldn't gamble, but he was expert at gambling. So he trained Vishnu. The idea here is, if that contingency arises, I won't fall into it. I won't be caught unawares. And the second thing is that you should recognize that, okay, obeying elders is good. So I once gave this class, and after the session, I asked people, so what point did you like? What did you learn? So one boy said, yeah, one boy, a teenager boy said, obeying our elders is very dangerous. So that is taking a lesson out of context. So generally, when we give a class, the audience, we speak 100%. The audience remembers about 10 to 20%. And God knows which 10 to 20% it will be. But anyway, so that is not the lesson. But still, see, obeying elders is definitely a good thing. But if the elders are like Dhritarashtra, then that is not the most. That cannot be made the supreme value. So what happened is, at the end of the exile of the Pandavas, there are multiple rounds of peace negotiation that happened. After the Iraq war got over, then Drupada sent his Brahmana priest with a message to the Kauravas, saying that now they have lived out through the period of exile. Now you give back their kingdom to them. And Dhritarashtra heard the message, says, let me think about it. I will send my message back. And he said, I'll send Sanjay as my messenger. And then he sent Sanjay as messenger. And Dhritarashtra said that, oh Pandava, oh Yudhishthira and Pandavas, my best wishes to you. May all be peaceful with you. He said that everything in this world is temporary. Everybody's a grahastha. They have to take vanaprastha and retire from the world eventually. So you are so fortunate that while you are young itself, you have become vanaprastha. So why do you want to become grahastha? Stay in the forest and stay happy. For a kingdom which is temporary, why do you want to fight against your relatives and cause great bloodshed? Just stay happy when you. So now, what Dhritarashtra was doing is, he was using philosophy to rationalize. Rationalize, this does not mean to be rational. It actually means to use our intelligence, our reasoning faculty to give a more acceptable reason for a less acceptable action. So we've done something wrong and we try to justify it. That's rationalize. Suppose, say, a husband has promised his wife, I'll stop smoking. And she comes into a room and she sees he's smoking. Why did you smoke? Actually, the room was so cold. I wanted to make it warm for you. So, when we rationalize, what do? Is we tell rational lies. We use our intelligence to tell lies. So Dhritarashtra was rationalizing over it. So Yudhishthira replied, "Oh Sanjay, what made you think that I want to fight a war? I only want to serve our dynasty and serve our ancestors in our dynasty. Said that there is a time for vanaprastha, but we are still young. We have to do our duty to our ancestors and beget children, and we have to rule as a service to the citizens who have given us so much throughout life." He said that I am only asking you this, Dhritarashtra, to honor the word that we have given, to honor the agreement that was made in his presence. If at all any war happens, that will be because of Duryodhana's refusal to honor his words. I have no desire for a war at all. So sometimes people very cunningly try to blame the other person, blame the victim. You must have done something. But at that time, one should not let oneself be blamed. So the point I'm making over here is, did Yudhishthir regret what he did? Yes, he acknowledged that I got carried away. Was there reform? Yes. He made sure that he would not be succumbing to gambling like that. He would not be caught unawares. And he did not let a virtue like obeying elders become the supreme virtue. There are many virtues, no doubt. Speaking truth is a virtue. But there are some situations where speaking truth may actually be counterproductive. Suppose a riot is going on and our friend belongs to the community that is being targeted. And at that time, that friend knocks on our door, please save me. And we hide that friend in our basement. And then the rioters come, is he here? Should we speak the truth again? So if we speak the truth, there will be disaster. So virtue is good. But if we make any virtue into the supreme virtue, then that needs to be questioned. Whether that is the supreme virtue at that particular point or not, that has to be evaluated. Yesterday I was making this theme about how there are categorical ethics, and then there is, does anyone remember the other one? Contextual ethics. Categorical ethics means that this is right and this is wrong. So speaking truth is right, speaking false is wrong. That's categorical ethics. But contextual ethics is, I have to look at the context. Why are we speaking? In what will the result of speaking is? The contextual ethics means there is action, and we understand that before the action comes the intent of the action, and after that comes the consequence of the action. And we consider all these three, and then we make a decision. That is contextual ethics. So Yudhishthir's reform was that initially he was operating based on categorical ethics. I have made a vow to obey my elders, and I'll obey my elders no matter what. It was he started the gambling match. He felt, but the gambling match is going too far. Dhritarashtra will put a foot down. He will stop it. Dhritarashtra didn't stop. So then, by the end of after the exile was over, Yudhishthira recognized that I have to operate not based on categorical ethics but contextual ethics. Now, of course, this is from an ethical perspective. We can look at Yudhishthira as a pure devotee and see his actions from a devotional perspective. And whatever he did was ultimately a plan of the Lord. And Yudhishthira's actions ultimately brought the situation where Krishna could demonstrate through Draupadi's example how even when we have many protectors, we may have no protector except Krishna. So actions can be seen from different perspectives. So whenever we are looking at great characters in scripture, their actions, if we are looking, so there are multiple levels. We can look at it from a devotional perspective. Then it is not. It is all the Leela of the Lord, and it is primarily for relation. But we can look at it from an ethical perspective also. So right now we are looking from this ethical perspective. So Yudhishthira's example is of a good person who did a bad thing, but there was remorse. I should not have done it. There was reform. I won't let myself be put in a situation where I will do this. So now in between is the last category which I'll take for a few minutes and then we'll stop. So what is between goodness and wickedness? Three categories of people I have said. Weakness. Now weakness means that person feels bad on doing bad. The remorse is there, but reform is not there. Now why might that happen? There's remorse, but no reform. So sometimes when a person has weakness, so when a person has goodness and they make a mistake, at that time it should definitely forgiveness. Forgive and forget. That's the best thing to do. But if the person has weakness, then also forgiveness may be required, but forgiveness alone is not enough. I'll explain why. Because say suppose somebody is an alcoholic, they earnestly want to give up alcohol. And they want to recover. They try to recover. But suppose there's an alcoholic and they are staying in a house and there's a bar right next to their house. Now, some people have a bar next to their house, or some people have a bar inside their house. And they say, okay, it's not for me, it's for my guests when they come. Okay, yes, there is a guest who will come, and that guest will be your own alcoholism. Isn't it? If you have a bar close by, then there will be no bar to go to the bar. It's very easily go there. So sometimes when a person repeatedly does something wrong, that does not necessarily mean that that person is a bad person. It just means that person may need some help in enforcing boundaries. If you are really serious about giving up alcoholism, you cannot stay next door. You need to relocate. If you are serious about giving up a particular habit, then you have to make sure that you don't put yourself in situations where relapse into that habit is very easy. So in that situation, basically, the remorse is there, that is good. The person is feeling bad. But if reform is not there, then to aid in the reform, they need boundaries. So if somebody spends a lot of time on social media or on internet or watching TV, and they say, I don't want to waste so much time. But if they're not able to stop, then maybe have some apps, some regulating apps, maybe have some kind of parental control, maybe have something which, we can even have an accountability partner who helps us avoid going into that direction too much or too often. So sometimes we need help in that. So in general, if weakness is to be overcome, we need boundaries. That's externally. So the boundaries alone are not the solution. Somebody who is alcoholic, once the urge for alcohol comes, they may stay 10 miles away from a bar. Nobody says no place which is 10 miles away from a bar. Lawrence bar nearby. But even if they're 10 miles away from a bar, they can drive 10 miles and take go into a bar. So that's not the point. So boundaries are never the final solution. But quite often, they are the first solution. The first solution. See, locks or walls. When people have locks for their homes, locks, they can't stop thieves. If somebody wants to rob, they can still find a way to break a lock. Even sophisticated security system, also alarm system, they can break it. But what locks can do is they can stop good people from becoming thieves. That means sometimes even good people may have moments of weakness. If this house is open, there's nobody here. I need something. I'm sneak in and take something. So in general, boundaries and locks and some kind of wall, some kind of barriers, they ensure that good people stay good. Bad people will do bad things, and in another thing, good people will do good things. But even good people may have some weaknesses. And that's why there have to be some boundaries, some distances. So in almost every traditional society, even if say men and women work together, there is some gender boundary, some distance between how men and women interact with each other. So that distance is required. Now, exactly how much that boundary, gender distance or boundary can be or will be may vary from culture to culture. But there has to be some level of boundaries required, because everybody can have moments of weakness. So that's one thing. But boundaries, as I said, alone are not enough. For overcoming weaknesses, if you want to overcome, then two things are required. One is boundaries, and the other is bonds. Bonds means that we need to be connected, bonded in something higher. So boundaries that keep us away from lower things. So lower things could be whatever the indulgences, the habits you want to do. And bonds that link us or keep us close to higher things in our life. And the ultimate bond is the bond of bhakti. The bond of bhakti connects us with Krishna. So when we have something meaningful, something valuable, something uplifting to do in our life, then even if there are moments of weakness, we will not succumb to them. Or even if we succumb, we will not succumb so much. So if we keep ourselves busy in responsible engagements, even if we get angry with someone and we feel like I want to yell at this person, I want to plot against this person, I want to knock down this person. There's so many more things to do in my life. I don't have time for this. So generally, if we want to overcome our weaknesses, there are boundaries and there are bonds. In Bhakti, for example, we have these 4 regulatory principles. But there are specific habits there. Talk about no meat eating, no gambling. But apart from the specific habits or specific actions, what they represent is the principle of boundaries. Krishna talks about these bonds and boundaries in terms of controlling the mind. He says, Asamshayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chali abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagya chiguryate. So vairagya is the principle of boundaries. Keep boundaries by which, even if our mind goes wild, there is no immediate opportunity to succumb. And then abhyasa is practice. But practice what? Practice to engage ourselves responsibly so that we develop bonds with meaningful things. So if we have a daily schedule when we do sadhana, if we fill our life with puja and seva, and we of course have our family and professional responsibilities. If we keep ourselves responsibly engaged, then the bonds will protect us. The ultimate bond is the bond of bhakti, as I mentioned earlier. So the bond of bhakti, it connects us with Krishna, who is all pure. And it is pure, supreme purity that removes the impurity within us. Krishna is supremely strong, and his goodness, his strength helps us overcome our weaknesses. And that is why wherever we might be, we can go beyond our weaknesses. And similarly, when we see somebody apologizing and repenting for what they did, but again relapsing. And rather than thinking that they are a person who is a bad person, we need to say, yeah, this person could be a good person, but they have this weakness. So we can forgive, but here the forgiveness cannot be unconditional. Okay, I forgive and forget completely. No, I cannot forgive. Yes, I'm ready to forgive in the sense that I won't hold the past against you forever. But then there has to be some evidence that you are ready to reform. And if you are not ready to reform, then we need to create some boundaries. We need to create some bonds. And we need to help those people. Okay, what kind of boundaries will actually help? And there's proper discussion. And if they are ready to commit to those boundaries, and if they're ready to commit to the bonds, then they will overcome the weakness. So this is the last point I'll conclude with over here. In general, there is forgiving and there is trusting. So forgiving is for the past, and that should always be done. Don't hold people's past against them. Oh, you did this at that time, and you did this at that time, and you did this at that time. Don't need to bring the past, rake up the past again and again. Love does not keep score of wrongs of people. But at the same time, while forgiveness, this can be given. But trusting, this has to be on. Trusting is for the future. So if we give money to someone and they just lost the money, maybe they said, I want money for some medical emergency, and then they used it for gambling and lost the money. Now they may apologize. But next time when they ask us for money, maybe we shouldn't be so quick in giving them. Say, I forgive you, but I don't trust you. So there is a difference between forgiving and trust. So people with weakness, they can be forgiven, but if they are to be trusted, then they have to earn the trust. And this earning is done by adherence to boundaries and to bonds. When this is done, then they will be able to, they are actually showing that they want to change. And when they do change, then gradually they will also earn the trust. So this is how the Gita offers us wisdom. The Mahabharata offers us examples by which we can also act with greater wisdom in our relationship with others, understand each other better, and help each other more. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. We talked about 3 categories of people. The first was people with wickedness. And which was the example for this? Duryodhana. And this was actually you could say 1614, the verse which you discussed on the Bhagavad Gita. I'll kill this enemy and I'll kill those. That's exactly Duryodhana's mentality in many ways. So here we discussed there is no remorse and there is no reform. Then the second example we discussed about goodness. The example of that was Yudhishthir. Now Yudhishthir, we discussed even when he gambled, it was not because he was a gambling addict or he had uncontrolled impulses. Rather, it was a misapplication of a virtue. Or rather, the virtue of obeying elders is well-intentioned. It is well-intentioned, but it's a misapplied because his elders were not well-intentioned at that particular point. So there was remorse. He acknowledged that I got carried away. And there was reform. Reform was that he ensured that he would not be caught unprepared if he had to gamble. And he rose from a categorical understanding of ethics to contextual understanding. He didn't make obeying elders his topmost virtue. That's why when later Dhritarashtra tried to manipulate him, he said no. So then lastly we discussed is weakness. So when a person has weakness, there is remorse, but there is no reform. So in such situation, it's not that the person is bad. But here, because they have weakness, they need to be helped to overcome that by having boundaries and bonds. Boundaries to protect them from the weaknesses that they have or the objects in which they will indulge because of the weaknesses. And bonds so that they're busy doing something valuable and meaningful that will lift and purify them. And then there is bhakti as the ultimate bond. So, if there is wickedness, if there is forgiveness, that is simply foolishness over you. Here, they need to be actively punished or disciplined. Here, definitely there should be forgiveness and goodness, and with respect to weakness, we forgive and not trust. Rather saying don't trust, but rather withhold trust till they show something. And that way, we all can interact more wisely with each other. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments?
I have a friend who is very good. Um, he has some bad habits and he honestly wants to. I think it's a classic example of weakness where he does not have the will. Whenever he sees something that he wants to overcome, he indulges in it. And at the same time, he also follows a lot of philosophy. He listens to a lot of uh, different people, and he has his own mind. So when I try to tell him that this is one way, so if he could spare some time and come in Krishna consciousness, and then could replace. So then he feels that is I'm compelling him to some theory which he does not believe in. So it's an issue of trust. It might be something to do with me because I am not a devotee at that level. And when he sees me preaching something which I do not practice, so that is one thing. But there could be some other. So how can I genuinely help him?
Yes. So if we see somebody who is struggling because of some weakness and then they're not able to overcome, but when we try to encourage them to come to Krishna Bhakti, they're not ready. So Bhakti, it can be seen as a cultural or a religious activity. And that's how people see it. Or they can also see it it's like one particular worldview, one particular ideology. But Bhakti can also be seen as inner empowerment. Now, this is the age where we talk about empowerment, women's empowerment, racial empowerment, or there's so many ideas of empowerment. Say here in New Zealand and Australia, there were the original tribals, Maoris, or the First Nation, they were living over here. Not to empower them. So the idea of empowerment is there. But there is also inner empowerment. Inner empowerment means that we have weaknesses within us and we need to be able to overcome these weaknesses. So Bhakti can be presented not just as a religious or a spiritual or emotional activity, also it can be presented as an activity for inner empowerment. So the analytical framework that I described today, to share something like that. That we have weaknesses inside us, and those weaknesses often stop us from doing what we want to do. So Bhakti what strengthens us to rise above those weaknesses. And it's not just what we are talking about. There are many people who strive for de-addiction. I would say, for example, there's the 12 steps and Alcoholics Anonymous. The 12 steps, the first principle is that now our life has gone out of control and we need the help of a power beyond ourselves to be able to control. So that is something which is very important, that acknowledgement. So it's not something which is only sectarian. It is so there now Alcoholics Anonymous, there is one friend of mine who is writing about the 12 steps from a bhakti perspective. From Bhagavad perspective, how would there are Christian authors who have written about the 12 steps from a biblical perspective. So the idea is that the divine as you may conceive it. Now we conceive the divine as Krishna. And that's our tradition. Somebody else may not be wanting to conceive of the divine as Krishna. But the point is, even if we acknowledge that there is some reality beyond me, and that reality can help me, and I reach out. So bhakti is, in one sense, the activity of reaching out to a power beyond ourselves, what helping us in overcoming our weaknesses. So if you present it that way, then who knows, that person may be a little more receptive. Thank you. Any other questions?
We mentioned about hate and you know. So in case of this war going on, and this that they are like terrorists, and then it's like jealous and of the dude. So how do you look at this context? Who's look like these are very angry and who's still hate. How should it be?
Okay. In general, when we take scriptural principles and apply them to particular situations, we always have to be careful because particularities are often complex. And rather than see scripture as a means to give us ready verdicts, that this is right and this is wrong, we see scripture as a resource for deeper thinking, better analysis. There are two different things. One is this is the conclusion, and this is the means to arrive at a conclusion. So generally, it is better that we see scripture as something which can enhance our analytical ability. And then we can think and we can understand. So I comment on many contemporary issues from Bhavita perspective on my YouTube channel. So I made 2-3 videos about this. But I'll quickly summarize. So the first point is that, so I talk about 3 things in this issue. One is the nature of violence. So all violence is not the same. One is somebody breaking into civilian areas and deliberately killing civilians. That is one thing. The other is somebody wanting to kill terrorists who intentionally are hiding in civilian areas. So all violence is not the same. In any kind of war is brutal, and there will always be collateral damage. So collateral damage means people who are not the target will get killed. So how can that be avoided? Well, India also faced something similar in Punjab when the Khalistani movement was going on, and there were all these people who were sometimes living in civilian areas. Kashmir also same thing happened. Never that brutal or that bad, because it was not that issue was not similar. But the point is that sometimes we have to differentiate between violence of different kinds. One is deliberately targeted towards civilians, and the other is you are deliberately hiding among civilians so that you can blame the other party that you are targeting civilians. The two are very different things. And the second point is that now we can say there has to be proportionate or there should not be excessive violence. But how do we define what is excessive violence? So generally, any kind of resolution. So first of all, nature of violence is not all violence is not equal. So we cannot just say that this is bad and that is bad. Everything is bad. There are different kinds of violence. Then there is, whenever there is resolution, there has to be simultaneously a confrontational approach and a non-confrontational approach. So non-confrontational approach means when there is a active threat, there has to be an active counter about it. Without that, only a non-confrontational approach will not work. You see, India, Pakistan, China. There were several wars till the 1970s or 1980s. But after that, there have been no major wars. One reason for that is all 3 countries got nuclear weapons. Now, I'm not supporting nuclear weapons, but the point is that brought certain level of deterrence. If you hit us, we're going to hit you back. So sometimes the way to have peace is to be ready for war. And when the other person knows that there are going to be consequences of actions. See, basically, wicked people will always be there. And you cannot annihilate all wicked people. You can try, but we can't. But the only thing that keeps wicked people in control is fear of consequence. That's why do we need confrontational approach? It is for wicked people, those with wickedness, either eliminate them or regulate them. That's required. So confrontational approach is required. But at the same time, you cannot have a confrontational approach forever. We cannot start saying that, oh, this whole community of people is they're all wicked, they're all terrorists, they're all evil, it should all be destroyed. Once we start going down that path, that can be either side. The Arabs can say the whole the Zionist movement, anti what is it called? Anti-Semitic. Yeah, so hatred of Jews basically. So there is that hatred of Jews. So they have this genocidal intentions. We want to destroy all Jews. That's not going to work. Not all people in the community are right. And similarly, the Israel fighting will all destroy all the Arabs. Genocide is not going to work. So we need to understand that there are people who are wicked, they need to be stopped. But after that, if we start labeling, see what happens is, it's very simple to say that we are the good people, these are the bad people. Now, to some extent, this kind of categorization is valid. But if I start thinking the solution is annihilate all the bad people. But then, on what basis am I deciding that these are the bad people? I can have some criteria, but ultimately, it's like, you are terrible people because you're doing this. So even if they annihilate all of them, then what will happen is, in this group of good people only, we'll start finding some people. You disagree with me, you are also bad. So then annihilate them also. Once you start going on the path of annihilating, there is no end to it. So that's why there are non-confrontational approaches. Non-confrontational approach means live and let live. There are some things which are non-negotiable, but some things which are negotiable. When the Gita says this world is dukkhalaya, what it means is that in this world, or one meaning of it is that we will never have perfect solutions. We will never have a world where everybody will agree with the baby thing. So we have to recognize that we have to learn to tolerate others. And we have to learn to live with others. So how exactly to do that? So as long as we have both confrontation and non-confrontation approaches, then we will be able to work out a solution. So if you see in both the wars, there is the Mahabharata war or the Kurukshetra or the Ramayana war. In the Ramayana war, although Lord Ram killed Ravana, but Lord Ram did not destroy Lanka, nor did he annex Lanka into his kingdom. It was a more virtuous member of Lanka itself who was enthroned as the king. Similarly, after the war, Yudhishthir did not decide that I want to take revenge against Dhritarashtra. He did not think that side of the whole dynasty I'm going to wipe out. No, Duryodhana was a problem, and those who supported him by violently, they were problems. But he did not wipe out that side of the dynasty. So, in one sense, that was a limited war. There are particular people are targeted, and after that, Yudhishthir tried to build bridges, and he offered respect to Dhritarashtra and tried to live cordial. Vibhishan and Ram also they developed good relationship, and that when Rakshasa also started appreciating Lord Ram for what. So there has to be a simultaneous confrontation, non-confrontation approach. So it is not that everything can be overlooked. That any wrong, let's be peaceful. That doesn't work. Some people need to be spoken to only in the language of force. But the problem is so one is like the never violence scam. That doesn't work. So sometimes violence is required in this world. And the other is the only violence scam. Any problem, just shoot. That doesn't work. So what is required is a multi-pronged approach. So we can pray that people who are ready for non-confrontational approach from both sides You can gain influence, and violent elements can be curbed, and that's how things can be seen. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. So I have written a few books. This is my latest book. So much of what I spoke about goodness, weakness, wickedness, basically understanding